My boss, Dylan Crawford, stood over my desk with security behind him. His face was red, voice shaking with rage. "You bypassed the chain of command," he hissed, snatching my laptop. "Answering directly to the client without my approval? You're done." I stared at the email still open on my screen, the one I'd sent 20 minutes ago helping our biggest client with a simple contract question. 20 minutes. That's all it took to destroy my career. Security was already reaching for my badge. The walk through the office felt like a death march. Security flanked me on both sides, as Dylan made sure everyone saw what was happening. It was 4:50 in the afternoon, peak time when the entire floor was still buzzing with activity. Every head turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. My coworkers stared, then quickly looked away, pretending to be absorbed in their computer screens. I caught sight of Stephanie, my closest friend at Hartford and Associates. We'd started on the same day 3 years ago, grabbed lunch together at least twice a week, and she'd been helping me plan my birthday party for next month. Our eyes met for just a second. I saw fear flash across her face before she turned completely away, her shoulders hunching like she was trying to make herself invisible. Dylan stood in his glass office with his arms crossed, watching the whole scene. There was something in his expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't just anger. It was satisfaction. He was enjoying this. The security guard, an older man named Frank who'd always been friendly when checking my badge in the morning, wouldn't look at me. He just held out a flattened cardboard box. "Your personal items, ma'am." My hands shook as I pulled open my desk drawers. 3 years of my life went into that box. The small succulent plant my mom had given me when I got the job. A coffee mug from the company retreat in Vail last winter. My favorite pen, a graduation gift. Photos taped inside my drawer of my family back in Ohio. I tried to gather everything quickly, aware of dozens of eyes on me. But my fingers fumbled and the succulent tipped over, spilling dirt across my keyboard. "Leave it," Frank said quietly. "Cleaning crew will handle it." The elevator ride down felt endless. When we reached the lobby, I instinctively walked toward the restroom. I needed a moment to compose myself, to process what was happening. My access card beeped red. "Denied. Your credentials have been deactivated," Frank said, actually sounding apologetic now. "I'm sorry." The receptionist, several visitors in the waiting area, and 2 people from accounting who were passing through, all witnessed me being denied access to the bathroom. My face burned with humiliation as Frank escorted me out the front doors onto the Denver street. The late afternoon sun felt too bright, too normal, like the world should have recognized that mine was ending. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my cardboard box, watching people walk past living their regular Friday afternoons. I had no idea what to do next, so I walked to my car in the parking garage and just sat there for almost an hour, staring at nothing. When I finally pulled myself together enough to drive home, my hands were still trembling. I kept replaying the email in my mind. It had been so simple, so straightforward. Janet Royce, the director of operations at Pinnacle Industries, had sent me a direct question at 4:45. Our company had been working on a major contract with Pinnacle for 6 months. I'd been the primary coordinator, managing every detail, attending every meeting, building the relationship. Janet's email had asked about timeline flexibility on a specific clause. It was a straightforward question, and I knew the answer. I'd just reviewed that exact section 2 days ago. Dylan had left at 4:30 for his weekend golf trip. I'd seen him walk out, carrying his clubs. I responded to Janet professionally and accurately. 2 paragraphs, clear and helpful. I copied Dylan on the email. Standard protocol. The timestamp on my sent message was 4:48. Dylan's response arrived at 5:07. 19 minutes later, he forwarded my email to HR and legal, with a new subject line in all caps. Insubordination. His message was brief and vicious. This employee has violated chain of command protocol by responding directly to a client without management approval. This represents a serious breach of company policy and undermines senior leadership authority. Immediate termination recommended. By 5:15, I was being escorted out by security. When I got home to my apartment, I dropped the cardboard box by the door and collapsed on my couch. My phone buzzed. My mom, calling from our hometown outside Columbus. I almost didn't answer, but I knew she'd worry if I ignored her Friday check-in call. "Hi, sweetheart. How was your week?" I tried to hold it together. I really did. But hearing her voice broke something open. "Mom, I got fired." The concern in her voice made me cry harder. We talked for 20 minutes. She was confused, asking the same questions over and over because none of it made sense. I was confused too. How could helping a client be grounds for termination? After we hung up, I opened my laptop to send an email to HR explaining what really happened. My company email account displayed an error message. Access denied. Already terminated. I checked my LinkedIn profile. My professional headshot, which had been featured on Hartford & Associates team page this morning, was gone. They'd already removed me from the company roster. I'd simply vanished, erased like I'd never existed. My company Slack account showed the same error, deleted. I tried calling Stephanie. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Voicemail again. And a third time before I gave up. She was avoiding me. Saturday morning, I woke up hoping yesterday had been a nightmare. But my work laptop was gone, confiscated by security. The cardboard box of my desk items sat by my door like evidence of a crime scene. And my phone lit up with a text from a former colleague, Madison, who worked at a different consulting firm across town. "Hey, heard what happened. So sorry about the ethics violation. Let me know if you need anything." "Ethics violation?" I called her immediately. "Madison, what are you talking about? What ethics violation?" She sounded uncomfortable. "I just assumed. Everyone's saying. I mean, that's what the internal memo said." "What memo?" "Regina, I shouldn't have said anything. I'm sorry." She hung up. I spent the rest of Saturday making phone calls, trying to piece together what was being said about me. By evening, I had a clearer picture, and it was devastating. Dylan had sent an internal memo to senior leadership at Hartford & Associates. The memo claimed I had made unauthorized commitments to Pinnacle Industries, violated protocol, and risked significant company liability through my reckless communication. None of it was true. But the narrative was spreading like wildfire through Denver's tight-knit consulting community. Sunday, I forced myself to look at my bank account. $3,000 in savings. It sounded like a decent cushion until I started doing the math. Rent was due in 12 days. $1,800. My student loan payment would auto-draft in a week. $420. Car payment in 5 days. $360. I'd been living paycheck to paycheck, telling myself I was building a career and the money would improve. I'd planned to ask Dylan for a raise next month. I'd had a whole presentation prepared about the Pinnacle project and my contributions. My health insurance would terminate in 72 hours. I had a dentist appointment scheduled for next week that I'd now have to cancel. And I'd need to figure out COBRA payments if I wanted to keep coverage, which would be another $350 monthly. I pulled up a notepad and started listing my monthly expenses. The total made my stomach turn. Even with bare minimum spending, cutting everything non-essential, I had maybe 6 weeks before financial disaster. And that was assuming I found a new job immediately. The worst part was the silence. In 3 years at Hartford & Associates, I'd built relationships. Or so I thought. I'd mentored 2 junior staff members. I'd covered for coworkers when they needed time off. I'd stayed late to help with proposal deadlines that weren't even my projects. My phone stayed quiet all weekend. No calls, no texts of support. By Sunday night, I understood what was happening. Dylan wasn't just firing me. He was annihilating my professional reputation and making sure everyone knew to stay away from the contaminated ex-employee. I'd never felt so alone in my life. Monday morning at 7, I was parked outside Hartford and Associates. I'd barely slept, running through scenarios all night. The plan was simple. Speak directly with Marcus Hartford, the company founder. He was semi-retired now, only coming into the office occasionally. But he had a reputation for fairness. He'd started this company. Surely he'd listen. The lobby was empty when I walked in. Paula, the receptionist, looked up from her coffee, and her face went pale. "Regina," she said quietly, "you can't be here. I just need 5 minutes with Mr. Hartford." "It's important." Paula glanced nervously toward the elevator bank. "He's not available." "When will he be in?" "I mean, he's not available to see you." "I'm sorry." She looked genuinely distressed. "I've been given instructions." "Instructions about me specifically?" She nodded. "Paula, you know me. I've worked here for 3 years. Something wrong happened, and I just need a chance to explain." "I can't," she whispered. "I was told not to accept any communications from you. Any letters, messages, nothing. I'm really sorry, Regina." The elevator doors opened and Thomas Brighton emerged. He was Hartford and Associates' in-house legal counsel. A sharp-dressed man in his late 40s who I'd always found intimidating but fair. "Miss Wilson." His voice was formal, cold. "You're trespassing. You need to leave the premises immediately. I just want to speak with Marcus Hartford." "That won't be possible. If you don't leave voluntarily, I'll have to call security." He crossed his arms. "I'm not making idle threats." The humiliation of being escorted out once was enough. I left. When I got back to my apartment, there was a FedEx envelope propped against my door. My name was printed on the label with the return address of Morrison and Lee, a prominent Denver law firm. My hands shook as I opened it. The cease and desist letter was 3 pages long, printed on heavy legal stationery that somehow made the words feel more threatening. It warned me against defaming the company or its employees through false statements. It referenced a non-disparagement clause in my employment contract, a document I'd signed 3 years ago during the excited blur of getting hired. I barely remembered that clause existed. The letter threatened legal action if I contacted any Hartford and Associates clients, current employees, or made any public statements about my termination. Violations would result in immediate legal action seeking monetary damages and injunctive relief. I read it 3 times, feeling the walls closing in. They were silencing me before I'd even tried to speak, but I had to find work. I couldn't just give up. Over the next 2 days, I applied to 14 consulting firms in the Denver area. I updated my resume, removing Hartford and Associates from my current employment and listing myself as available immediately. I crafted careful cover letters that explained I was seeking new opportunities without mentioning why I'd left my last position. 3 firms called me back by Wednesday. I felt a tiny spark of hope. The first interview was scheduled for Thursday at 10. I drove to their office in the Denver Tech Center, dressed professionally, prepared to answer tough questions. The interview started well. The hiring manager, a woman named Laura, seemed impressed with my experience on the Pinnacle project. Then her assistant knocked on the conference room door. "Laura, you have an urgent call." Laura excused herself. When she came back 7 minutes later, her entire demeanor had changed. The warmth was gone. Her smile looked plastic. "I'm sorry, Regina. We're actually moving in a different direction with this position." She stood up, clearly ending the interview 30 minutes early. "Thank you for coming in." The second firm canceled my interview by email. No explanation. The third interview was scheduled for Friday. I showed up early, waited in their lobby for 20 minutes past my appointment time, and was finally told the position had been filled. The receptionist wouldn't make eye contact. Dylan was calling them, or someone at Hartford and Associates was. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. Thursday evening, I worked up the courage to reach out to Gerald Fisher. He was a senior partner who'd recruited me to Hartford and Associates from my previous job at a smaller firm. Gerald had always been supportive, calling me the future of this company during my performance reviews. He'd encouraged me to take the lead on the Pinnacle project, saying it would be my breakout case. I texted him asking if we could meet for coffee. To my surprise, he agreed immediately. Saturday morning at 9, a Starbucks near his house. I got there 15 minutes early and ordered a coffee I couldn't afford, just to have something to do with my hands. Gerald walked in exactly at 9, looking fit and polished in weekend casual wear. But something was different. The warmth I'd always seen in his eyes was missing. We sat down at a corner table. I started to explain what happened, but he cut me off almost immediately. Regina, I know what happened. Dylan showed us the entire email chain. Then you know I didn't do anything wrong. I helped a client with a simple question. You went around Dylan deliberately. His voice was flat, factual, like he was stating something obvious. I didn't go around anyone. I copied him on the email. He'd already left for the day. Janet needed an answer, and I had it. Gerald took a sip of his coffee, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. You're young. You don't understand the importance of hierarchy in client relations. Senior leadership needs to manage those relationships carefully. I understand hierarchy, but this is being blown completely out of proportion. Is it? He set down his cup. Dylan is a respected manager with 8 years at the firm. You're a coordinator who's been here 3 years. Who do you think the leadership team is going to believe? The words hit like a slap. So it doesn't matter what actually happened. It just matters who has more seniority. It matters that you showed poor judgment. Gerald stood up. You'll recover from this. You're talented. Find another position. Learn from this experience. And move on. But don't contact me again, Regina. I can't be associated with this situation. He left his coffee cup on the table, barely touched, and walked out. I sat there alone for almost an hour, staring at nothing, feeling something inside me crack. The mentor I'd trusted, the person who'd praised my work and encouraged my career, had just abandoned me without even listening to my side. That evening, I made the mistake of checking LinkedIn. Dylan had posted again. This time the post was more detailed, though he still didn't mention my name. He wrote about handling a difficult situation with a team member who demonstrated serious lapses in judgment and professional standards. He talked about the hard decisions leaders must make to protect their teams and clients. The post had 63 likes. Dozens of comments praised his leadership and decision-making. Several people wrote things like, "It's never easy to let someone go, but you did the right thing," and "This generation doesn't understand accountability." My hands hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to respond, to defend myself, to tell the truth. But the cease and desist letter sat on my kitchen counter, and I could imagine Morrison and Lee filing a lawsuit the moment I hit post. I was trapped, silenced, and Dylan was controlling the narrative completely. Monday morning, I filed for unemployment benefits online. I hated having to do it. I'd never been on unemployment in my life, had always been self-sufficient since graduating college, but I had no choice. The claim went through initially, and I felt a small relief. At least I'd have something while I kept job searching. The benefit amount would be about $420 per week. Not nearly enough to cover all my expenses, but better than nothing. Then Wednesday, I received a notice. Hartford and Associates was contesting my unemployment claim. Their reason? Terminated for willful misconduct. Willful misconduct. The words made me feel sick, as if I'd deliberately sabotaged something, acted maliciously, intended to cause harm. The notice said I'd have to wait 3 weeks for a hearing where both sides could present evidence. Until then, no benefits would be paid. I checked my bank account. Between paying rent 2 days ago and my car payment, I was down to $1,800. My student loans would auto-draft tomorrow, bringing me down to $1,380. And I still needed groceries, gas, phone bill, utilities. I pulled up a spreadsheet and ran the numbers 5 different ways, trying to make the math work. It didn't. At this burn rate, I'd be completely broke in less than a month. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Eviction, car repossession, defaulting on student loans, moving back to Ohio and living with my mom, who was living on a tight budget herself after my dad passed away 4 years ago. Every action I took to defend myself or fight back made things worse. Every door I tried to open slammed shut in my face. Dylan had positioned himself as the reasonable manager making a tough but necessary decision, while I was being painted as the problem employee who couldn't accept accountability. And the cruelest part was that I'd done nothing wrong. I'd helped a client. That was literally my job. Wednesday morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. No name, just digits I didn't recognize. Be on Zoom link tomorrow, 9 a.m. Don't miss it. Trust me. I stared at the message. Was this some kind of trap? Another way for Dylan or Hartford and Associates to gather evidence against me for some new accusation? The text included a Zoom link, but when I clicked it, the meeting was password protected. I had no way to join even if I wanted to. I spent the rest of the day debating whether to respond, whether to ask who this was, whether to ignore it completely. The message felt ominous and hopeful at the same time, which made no sense. Thursday morning at 8:55, another text arrived from the same number. Just a 6-digit code. The password. My hands were actually shaking as I typed the Zoom link into my browser. Whatever this was, someone wanted me to see it badly enough to give me access to what was clearly supposed to be a private meeting. At exactly 9, I logged in with my camera and microphone both turned off. My screen filled with dozens of faces. I recognized almost all of them. This was a Hartford and Associates all-hands meeting, the kind the company held once a quarter to review performance and strategy. Dylan was presenting, and seeing his face on screen made my stomach clench. He looked confident, polished, gesturing with a laser pointer at a slide deck showing quarterly revenue numbers. As you can see, we exceeded our targets by 18% this quarter, Dylan was saying. The Pinnacle Industries contract was a significant contributor to that success. The negotiation process was challenging and required careful senior leadership to navigate the complex requirements. He was taking credit for Pinnacle, the project I'd coordinated for 6 months, the relationship I'd built, the contract terms I'd helped structure. I wanted to throw my laptop across the room. The final agreement positions Hartford and Associates for continued growth with Pinnacle, Dylan continued. It required detailed attention to specific clauses and timeline considerations that could have derailed the entire deal. But through strategic oversight, suddenly, a new participant joined the meeting. The name showed on screen: Robert Mendoza, Pinnacle Industries. Dylan's face went completely white. His laser pointer froze mid-gesture. There was a long, awkward silence. Marcus Hartford, who I could see in a small box at the top of the screen, looked confused. Mr. Mendoza? I didn't realize we had external guests joining this morning. My apologies for the intrusion, Mr. Hartford. The voice was deep, authoritative, calm. I asked to be included in this meeting. I'm Robert Mendoza, General Counsel for Pinnacle Industries. I believe it's important that I address your team directly. Of course, Marcus said, though he clearly wasn't sure what was happening. We're always happy to hear from our valued clients. Thank you. If you'll permit me to share my screen for just a moment. Marcus nodded, and the view shifted. Robert Mendoza's screen showed 2 documents side by side. On the left was an email. My email. The one I'd sent to Janet Royce that Friday evening. On the right was a section of the final Pinnacle contract, with specific language highlighted in yellow. This email, Mendoza began, was sent to our Director of Operations on Friday, October 11th, at 4:48 p.m. It was in response to a question Miss Royce had about timeline flexibility on Clause 7B of our contract negotiations. I held my breath. The response was prompt, accurate, and extremely helpful. It allowed our team to restructure our internal approach to implementation scheduling. The final contract language you see here on the right directly reflects the guidance provided in this email. This single piece of advice prevented what would have been a $3 million cost overrun on our end. $3 million. I'd had no idea my response had been that significant. Now, I notice your billing records show 60 hours of senior partner consultation time for this particular clause analysis, Mendoza continued. At your standard rate of $450 per hour, that's $27,000. But the actual solution came from this 4-minute email. From someone named Regina Wilson. The silence on the call was absolute. I'd like to thank Miss Wilson personally for her excellent work, Mendoza said. Where is she? Is she on this call? Nobody spoke. I sat frozen at my kitchen table, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. Thomas Brighton's face appeared larger on screen as he unmuted. Mr. Mendoza, Regina Wilson is no longer with the firm. No longer with the firm? As of when? As of last Friday evening. There was a pause. When Mendoza spoke again, his tone had shifted. The warmth was gone. Last Friday? October 11th? The same day she sent this email? That's correct. She was terminated the same day she provided guidance that saved my company $3 million. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, and it hung in the digital air like an accusation. Thomas Brighton suddenly looked like he'd been struck. He was looking at something off-screen, typing rapidly on a keyboard I couldn't see. His eyes widened. He pulled up what looked like a document, scanned it quickly, and his face went absolutely pale. Dylan, Thomas said slowly. What exact time did you terminate Regina Wilson? Dylan tried to respond, but his voice cracked. I don't see how that's relevant to this meeting. What time, Dylan? The authority in Thomas's voice made it clear this wasn't optional. Around 5:15, Dylan finally said. Thomas Brighton closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he looked directly at Dylan's camera box. You just triggered the founder's protection clause. There was a collective intake of breath from people on the call. Apparently, others knew what that meant, even if I didn't. Marcus Hartford suddenly spoke, his voice sharp and clear. Thomas, are you absolutely certain? Completely certain, Mr. Hartford. Client-initiated termination within the same business day as unsolicited client praise. The conditions are unambiguous. Marcus's face was grim. Dylan, report to my office immediately. Thomas, I need you there as well. Everyone else, this meeting is concluded. The Zoom window went black. I sat staring at my blank laptop screen, my mind racing. What was the founder's protection clause? What had just happened? And who had given me access to that meeting? My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Regina, this is Thomas Brighton. We need to talk. Can you meet me at the Dasbog Coffee on 17th Street in 1 hour? The coffee shop was busy with the lunch crowd, but Thomas Brighton was easy to spot. He sat at a corner table with his back to the wall. 2 untouched coffees already waiting. When I approached, he gestured for me to sit and pushed one of the cups toward me. You sent me that Zoom link, I said. I did. He looked tired, older than I remembered. I've been suspicious of Dylan's management style for several months. Your termination was so aggressive, so immediate, that I started asking questions. When I saw the timing of everything, I knew I had to do something. What's the founder's protection clause? Thomas pulled out a folder and opened it to show me a document. The pages were yellowed with age, the text printed on what looked like an old typewriter. This is from Hartford and Associates' original founding documents. 1987. Marcus Hartford had just left his previous firm under difficult circumstances. He'd been wrongly accused of stealing a client, was forced out, and watched his former boss take credit for work Marcus had done. He flipped to a specific page and pointed to a highlighted section. When Marcus started this firm, he built in protections. This clause specifically targets managers who terminate employees the same day that employee receives direct, unsolicited praise from a client. It's designed to prevent exactly what Dylan did to you. I read the clause twice, my hands trembling. What does it mean for Dylan? Dylan forfeits all unvested stock options. He forfeits his partnership stake. And he must pay the terminated employee 200% of their annual salary. Plus, the company is required to launch an external investigation of his entire management history. The numbers started clicking in my head. How much are his stock options worth? Approximately $1.2 million. His partnership stake is worth another $800,000. Your salary was $72,000. So he owes you $144,000. Plus, there will likely be additional damages for the retaliation and defamation. We're looking at well over $2 million in total consequences for Dylan. I couldn't breathe. And his career? His career at Hartford and Associates is finished. The termination letter is being drafted as we speak. As for his career in the broader industry, Thomas shook his head. Once word gets out about why he was terminated, no consulting firm in Colorado will touch him. Why are you helping me? The question came out before I could stop it. Thomas leaned back in his chair. Because Dylan has been doing this for years. Taking credit for his team's work. Undermining talented employees. Pushing out anyone who might outshine him. 3 other people left quietly after similar situations. I suspected but couldn't prove anything. Your case is different. Because everything is documented with timestamps. The email. The client communication. The immediate termination. It's all there in black and white. What happens now? Marcus wants to meet with you tomorrow morning. Full reinstatement is on the table. Promotion to senior project director. Back pay. Public apology. Everything. For the first time in 2 weeks, I felt something like hope. Actual, real hope that this nightmare might end. That evening, I called my mom. She cried when I told her. We stayed on the phone for over an hour, talking about everything and nothing, just relieved to finally have good news. I was smiling when I hung up. Actually smiling. I ordered pizza delivery, something I hadn't been able to afford in days, and let myself imagine what tomorrow would bring. An apology from Marcus Hartford himself. My job back. Dylan fired and facing massive financial penalties. Justice. My laptop pinged with an email at 9:43 p.m. The sender was Catherine Walsh, a senior partner I'd only met a handful of times. She reported to Marcus Hartford and oversaw multiple departments. I'd always found her intimidating but competent. The subject line read, "Reconsideration." My pizza suddenly felt like lead in my stomach as I read, "Dear Miss Wilson, it has come to our attention that there may have been a misunderstanding regarding the applicability of certain founding documents to your employment situation. After further legal review, we have determined that Mr. Brighton's interpretation of the Founder's Protection Clause may not align with current company policy and contractual obligations. We are postponing tomorrow's meeting indefinitely, pending additional analysis. We will contact you if and when it becomes appropriate to continue discussions. Regards, Catherine Walsh, Senior partner. I read it 3 times. Then I called Thomas. They're burying it, he said immediately. His voice was tight with anger. I just got placed on administrative leave. Catherine called me an hour ago. What? Why? Dylan's family has deep connections to some of our biggest client portfolios. His uncle sits on the board of directors at Centennial Energy, which brings us about $8 million annually. Catherine Walsh personally recruited Dylan 5 years ago. She's his mentor. And she just convinced Marcus that pursuing this will damage the firm's relationships. But the clause is clear. You showed me the document. It is clear. But they're going to claim it was superseded by later policy updates. They'll argue it doesn't apply to modern employment situations. They'll tie it up in legal interpretations until you give up or run out of money to fight. Thomas sounded exhausted. I pushed too hard. Regina, I thought Marcus would do the right thing. But Catherine got to him. She's more concerned about protecting the firm's reputation and client relationships than she is about justice. What about you? I'll probably lose my job. Catherine made it clear that helping you was insubordinate. She's looking for a reason to terminate me without triggering any protections. Thomas, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have. Someone has to stand up. His voice was firm. I'm tired of watching good people get destroyed by politics and power plays. Whatever happens to me, at least I tried. We talked for another 20 minutes. He warned me that Hartford and Associates would likely offer a settlement. A number big enough to tempt me, but small enough to save Dylan from the full consequences. Whatever they offer, Thomas said, think carefully before you take it. You have more leverage than they want you to believe. The next morning, the FedEx envelope arrived at 10:15. Settlement agreement. Hartford and Associates offered me $50,000 in exchange for signing an NDA, releasing all claims, and agreeing that Dylan's termination decision was within normal managerial discretion. $50,000. I stared at the number. It would solve my immediate financial crisis. Pay my rent for months. Cover my car payment. Student loans. Health insurance. Let me breathe while I found a new job. But signing meant admitting Dylan did nothing wrong. It meant he'd keep his stock options, his partnership stake, his reputation. It meant Thomas Brighton would lose his job for nothing. The deadline was 72 hours. I checked my bank account. $412 remaining. My landlord had texted twice asking about rent, which was now 10 days overdue. I'd promised to pay by Friday, just 2 days away, but I had no idea how. I sat on my apartment floor and let myself cry for the first time since this started. Not angry tears or frustrated tears. Just deep, hopeless, sobbing because I didn't know what to do. Take the money and survive, or refuse it and risk losing everything on principle. The deadline was midnight Friday. I had until then to decide whether to sign away my rights for $50,000 or hold out for something that might never come. I made my decision at 11:59 on Thursday night. I emailed my rejection at exactly 11:59 p.m., 1 minute before deadline. My message was brief. I decline this settlement offer. The facts of my termination speak for themselves. I hit send and immediately felt like I might throw up. The response came faster than I expected. Friday morning at 8:43, my landlord knocked on my door. He held an official-looking notice. Regina, I hate to do this, but I received multiple noise complaints about your unit. I'm giving you 14-day notice to vacate. Noise complaints? From who? I can't disclose that information, but I've received 3 separate complaints in the past week about loud music and disturbances late at night. I'd been going to bed at 9 p.m. every night, too depressed and exhausted to do anything else. I haven't been playing loud music. I barely have the TV on. I'm sorry. The complaints are documented. You have 14 days. He handed me the notice and left. I later discovered my landlord's brother worked in IT at Hartford and Associates. Dylan's reach extended even into my housing. I spent the weekend applying to jobs with increasing desperation. Not just consulting firms anymore. Administrative positions. Coordinator roles at companies outside my field. Anything that would pay my bills. I submitted applications to 27 different organizations. Not one called back. On Monday, a former colleague named Jessica sent me a screenshot. She'd done it anonymously, creating a new email account just to reach me safely. The screenshot showed an email from Catherine Walsh sent to a distribution list of senior leaders at Denver area consulting firms. The subject line was personnel advisory. The message warned that a recently terminated employee may be applying to positions in the area and described me as litigious, difficult to manage, and prone to making false accusations when held accountable for performance issues. Catherine requested that, as a professional courtesy, colleagues in the industry be aware of this situation. I was blacklisted. Formally, systematically blacklisted across the entire Denver consulting market. Wednesday brought worse news. A certified letter from the Colorado Professional Ethics Board. Someone had filed a formal complaint against me. The allegations were detailed and completely fabricated. Falsifying client communications, misrepresenting my credentials, breach of fiduciary duty. The letter explained that all complaints triggered mandatory investigation. A hearing was scheduled in 6 weeks. If the board found merit to the allegations, I could face professional sanctions that would follow me for the rest of my career. I needed a lawyer. I called 3 attorneys. The cheapest wanted a $5,000 retainer just to start. I had $390 in my bank account. Thursday evening, Patrick called. We'd been dating for 8 months. He was kind, stable, worked in medical sales. We'd been talking about moving in together after my lease ended in 3 months. Regina, I can't do this anymore. I was so numb by this point that his words barely registered. Can't do what? This. Us. It's too much drama. You've been stressed and angry and I need space. I'm sorry. He broke up with me over the phone in 7 minutes. No discussion. No chance to explain. Just done. 2 days later, I saw on Instagram that he was dating someone new. She worked at Hartford and Associates. I recognized her from the company directory, a coordinator in Dylan's department. The timing was too convenient. Either Dylan had encouraged it, or Patrick had been pushed. Or maybe Patrick just saw the writing on the wall and jumped ship before being associated with me damaged his own reputation. By the 2nd week of October, I'd moved past despair into something worse. Numbness. I took a job at a coffee shop, making minimum wage. $11 an hour. The manager hired me on the spot, desperate for someone willing to work morning shifts. On my 2nd day, one of the other baristas recognized me. She'd seen the LinkedIn posts, heard the industry gossip. By the end of my shift, the entire staff knew I was that woman from the Hartford and Associates scandal. I worked in shame, making lattes and cleaning tables, while former colleagues occasionally came in and pretended not to see me. One morning, a client I'd worked with on the Pinnacle project came through the line. We made eye contact. She looked away quickly and left without ordering. The ethics hearing loomed. My eviction date was 3 days away. I'd found a cheaper apartment, but I needed first month's rent and deposit, which I didn't have. My mom had sent me $3,000 after draining her savings, but I'd already spent most of it on my car payment and student loans to avoid default. I learned that Thomas Brighton had been officially terminated. The reason given was sharing confidential company information. Hartford and Associates hit him with his own cease and desist letter, preventing him from speaking about anything related to my case or the Founder's Protection Clause. My only ally had been silenced and destroyed. 2 weeks before my eviction deadline and 3 weeks before the ethics hearing, I hit my lowest point. It was 2 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. Hadn't really slept more than a few hours at a time in weeks. I sat on my apartment floor, looking at my bank account. $17. My mom called. She was crying. "Regina, I'm so sorry. I can't send you more money. My water heater just broke, and the repair is $800. I don't have it." "It's okay, Mom. I'll figure something out." But I had no idea what that something would be. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started typing an email to Catherine Walsh. A surrender. An agreement to any terms they wanted. 50,000, 20,000, 10,000, whatever they'd give me to make this stop. I wrote 3 paragraphs detailing my acceptance of their original settlement terms. My finger hovered over the send button. My phone buzzed. Email from an address I didn't recognize. Patricia H. 4287 at securemail.com. The subject line, from Pinnacle Industries, read this. I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me open it. "Regina, this is Patricia Huang from Pinnacle Industries Legal Department. Robert Mendoza asked me to reach out through this secure channel. Do not give up. We know what Hartford is doing to you. Mendoza has been conducting his own investigation. Help is coming. Trust me. Delete this email immediately after reading." I stared at the message for 5 minutes. Then I deleted my surrender email to Catherine Walsh. I deleted Patricia's message as instructed. And for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. 4 days later, I woke to my phone exploding with notifications. 17 missed calls, all from numbers I didn't recognize. I checked my voicemail. Hands shaking from coffee shop. Shift exhaustion. The first message was from Robert Mendoza. "Regina, call me immediately. Do not speak to anyone from Hartford and Associates. This is urgent." I called him back at 7:43 a.m. "Regina, thank you for calling. I need you to listen carefully." His voice was calm, but intense. Pinnacle Industries has spent the past 3 weeks conducting a comprehensive audit of Hartford and Associates' billing practices. What we found goes far beyond your situation. We've uncovered systematic fraud spanning multiple years and multiple clients. I sat down hard on my couch. Fraud? Dylan Crawford has been billing clients for work performed by junior staff, marking up hours by 200 to 300%, and claiming senior partner time that never actually happened. Your case was the catalyst, but it's the tip of the iceberg. Over the past 3 years, we estimate approximately $4.7 million in fraudulent billing across Pinnacle and at least 3 other major clients. And Catherine Walsh? Her signature is on dozens of billing approvals. She wasn't just protecting Dylan because of mentorship or family connections. She was complicit in the fraud scheme. We believe she was receiving kickbacks through a consulting arrangement with a shell company Dylan controlled. My head spun. What happens now? I'm sending you an encrypted file. Inside are billing records, email chains, and documented evidence. We're issuing a formal demand letter to Hartford and Associates today at noon. They have 72 hours to respond with full restitution, termination of everyone involved, and your complete reinstatement with back pay and damages. Or we walk away, take 3 other major clients with us, and file a federal lawsuit for fraud. The email arrived 2 minutes after we hung up. The files inside were devastating. Page after page of billing records showing Dylan charging Pinnacle 60 hours of senior partner consultation for the contract clause that my 4-minute email had actually resolved. The pattern repeated across dozens of projects. One document showed Catherine Walsh approving charges for a 3-day senior leadership retreat that was supposedly focused on Pinnacle strategy. The retreat had actually been a company team-building event at a resort in Vail, and Pinnacle had been billed $78,000 for it. I was reading through the evidence when my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Regina Wilson? A woman's voice, smooth and cold. Yes? This is Catherine Walsh. I think we should talk directly. Every instinct told me to hang up. But I hit record on my phone's voice memo app and said, I'm listening. You're in a difficult position. I understand that. These past few weeks have been hard on you. Her tone was almost sympathetic, which made it more unsettling. I'd like to make you a better offer. $500,000. Complete NDA. Clean break. In exchange for what? You sign a statement saying you were aware of the billing practices at Hartford and Associates and never raised concerns about them during your employment. Just a formality, really. A statement of fact. I understood immediately. She wanted to make me a co-conspirator. If Pinnacle filed a lawsuit, Catherine could point to my statement and claim I'd been part of the scheme all along. It would dilute her liability and destroy any credibility I had. You're trying to frame me. I'm offering you $500,000, Regina. Think about what that means for your life. You could move anywhere, start over. All this goes away. If I refuse, her voice hardened. Then I present evidence that you were involved in falsifying billing records during your time as project coordinator. I have emails with your name on them, approvals you supposedly gave, timesheets you allegedly submitted, all fabricated, of course, but it will take years for you to prove that. Years of legal fees you can't afford. Years of being unemployable while fighting accusations of fraud. You'd destroy an innocent person to save yourself? I'd do what's necessary to protect my career and my family. You have 24 hours to decide. She hung up. I sat there holding my phone, feeling sick. Then I emailed the recording to Robert Mendoza with a brief explanation. His response came in 3 minutes. She just committed witness tampering and attempted obstruction. Thank you. This helps our case significantly. The next morning, I received a call from the Colorado Professional Ethics Board investigator, Miss Wilson. I'm calling to inform you that the complaint against you has been dismissed. Dismissed? Why? The complaint was filed from an IP address registered to Hartford and Associates, specifically from Catherine Walsh's office. Once we became aware of the Pinnacle Industries situation and the potential retaliation involved, the board determined the complaint was filed in bad faith. Furthermore, we're now investigating Miss Walsh for filing a false complaint. She may face sanctions herself. For the first time in a month, I felt like I could breathe. That afternoon, Hartford and Associates called an emergency all-company Zoom meeting. I received an invitation to join, sent directly from Marcus Hartford's assistant. The subject line read, "Your attendance requested." I logged in at exactly 2 p.m. The entire company was there, maybe 80 people in total. Marcus Hartford appeared on screen. He looked like he'd aged a decade. His face was drawn, his eyes tired. Thank you all for joining on short notice. I have difficult announcements to make. He paused, gathering himself. Effective immediately, Dylan Crawford and Catherine Walsh have been terminated from Hartford and Associates. An external investigation has confirmed serious violations of client billing practices and company ethics policies. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the participants. Dylan's name disappeared from the attendee list. Catherine's remained, but her camera was off. We are implementing immediate reforms to prevent such violations in the future. We are also making amends to affected clients and employees. Marcus looked directly at the camera, and it felt like he was looking straight at me. Regina Wilson, are you on this call? I unmuted. Yes, Mr. Hartford, I'm here. Regina, what happened to you was unconscionable. You were right. Dylan was wrong. I was wrong for not investigating sooner and for allowing Catherine to delay justice. On behalf of Hartford and Associates, I apologize publicly and unreservedly. The words I'd been waiting to hear for 5 weeks, but they felt hollow after everything I'd endured. Marcus continued. I'd like to offer you a position as Senior Project Director, 2 levels above your previous role, at a salary of $115,000 annually. In addition, you'll receive full payment under the Founders Protection Clause, $144,000. Punitive damages for the retaliation you endured, $200,000. And all legal fees associated with defending yourself will be covered by the firm. Total compensation of your settlement is $464,000. I heard someone on the call say wow under their breath. Furthermore, Thomas Brighton is being reinstated with full back pay and a promotion to senior counsel. His actions in bringing this situation to light showed integrity this firm should have protected from the beginning. The meeting continued with details about new oversight processes and ethics training, but I barely heard it. I was doing math in my head. $464,000, plus my new salary, financial security for the first time in my adult life. After the meeting ended, I received a text from Thomas Brighton. We did it. An hour later, the Denver Business Journal posted an article. Consulting firm executives terminated in billing fraud scheme. Dylan Crawford was named specifically. The article detailed the Pinnacle investigation and mentioned systematic overbilling estimated at more than $4 million. Dylan's career was over. I looked him up on LinkedIn out of morbid curiosity. His profile still listed him as director at Hartford & Associates. But update messages were flooding his activity feed. Former clients announcing they were reviewing their relationships with companies he'd worked with. Colleagues from other firms quietly removing him from their networks. His wife posted on Facebook 2 days later announcing their separation. Everything he'd built on lies and stolen credit had collapsed. 3 days after the all-hands meeting, I encountered Dylan in a parking garage downtown. We were both there for depositions related to the Pinnacle lawsuit. The underground garage was dimly lit, our footsteps echoing off concrete. He saw me and stopped. For a moment, I thought he might turn around and leave, but he walked toward me. Regina. His voice was hoarse. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I looked at him. Really looked. He'd lost weight. His suit hung loose on his frame. His eyes were bloodshot and ringed with dark circles. You're sorry, I repeated flatly. I made mistakes. I was under pressure to deliver results and Stop. I held up my hand. You didn't just fire me, Dylan. You tried to destroy me. You poisoned my reputation. You had me blacklisted from the entire industry. You got me evicted from my apartment. You filed false ethics charges that could have ended my career permanently. You manipulated my boyfriend to break up with me. You took everything from me because I answered an email. I know. And for what? My voice rose. For your ego? Because you couldn't stand that a junior employee might get credit for something? Because you'd been stealing credit for so long that you felt entitled to it? Dylan had no answer. He stood there, diminished, pathetic. I lost sleep. I lost my home. I went hungry. I worked at a coffee shop for minimum wage while wearing a name tag, serving coffee to people I used to work with on million-dollar contracts. I sat on my apartment floor at 2 a.m. trying to decide if I should give up everything I believed in just to survive. I stepped closer to him. You didn't just fire me. You tried to erase me. And you sleep soundly at night after doing that to another human being? Regina, please. I hope you remember this feeling, I said. This humiliation, this fear, this desperation. Because that's what you did to me. And I'll never forget what you're capable of. I walked past him to the elevator and didn't look back. 6 months later, I stood in my new office on the 7th floor of Hartford & Associates. Corner office. Window view. Overlooking downtown Denver and the mountains beyond. My mom's photo sat on my desk, both of us smiling at my promotion celebration when she'd flown out to visit last month. The transition hadn't been easy. Walking back into Hartford & Associates that first day after being reinstated felt surreal and uncomfortable. People didn't know how to act around me. Some were apologetic. Others avoided eye contact. A few clearly resented that I'd received such a large settlement. But I'd earned this office. not just through the settlement, but by completely reforming how Hartford and Associates managed client relationships and junior staff development. Marcus Hartford had appointed me to lead the ethics reform initiative, and I'd thrown myself into it with intensity born from experience. I now led a team of 12 people. We'd implemented new protocols, ensuring junior staff received proper credit for their contributions. Every client communication was logged and time-stamped. Billing practices were reviewed by an independent committee. And managers were evaluated not just on revenue generation, but on how well they developed and protected their teams. The changes were spreading beyond our firm. I'd been invited to speak at 3 industry conferences about workplace retaliation and professional integrity. My LinkedIn profile had grown to 4,200 followers. I posted regularly about protecting employees who do the right thing, and the engagement was overwhelming. Job offers arrived weekly from firms across the country, but I'd chosen to stay. I was changing the culture from within. That felt more valuable than running away. The personal healing took longer than I expected. I'd started therapy 2 months after the settlement, finally able to afford the copays. My therapist helped me understand that what I'd experienced was trauma. The systematic destruction of my reputation, the financial terror, the complete isolation had left marks. I'd developed anxiety symptoms, trouble sleeping, hypervigilance about my job performance. Slowly, I was healing. I'd started dating again, cautiously. Nothing serious yet, but I was learning to trust again. I'd reconnected with real friends, the ones who'd stood by me or who apologized genuinely for their silence. Stephanie, my work friend who'd avoided me during the crisis, had broken down crying when I returned to the office. She explained that Catherine had called her personally and threatened her job if she had any contact with me. We were close again now. She understood what fear could make people do. Thomas Brighton and I had coffee every month. He'd been promoted to senior counsel and credited me publicly for exposing the corruption that would have eventually destroyed Hartford and Associates from within. "You saved this company by refusing to stay quiet," he told me over lattes at our usual spot. "Everyone who works here now benefits from your courage." The relationship with Pinnacle Industries had deepened. Robert Mendoza became an unexpected mentor, checking in regularly and connecting me with other executives in Denver's business community. Pinnacle had increased their business with Hartford by 40%, specifically citing the reforms I'd implemented as proof the firm took integrity seriously. Mendoza helped me join the board of a professional ethics nonprofit that advocated for wrongfully terminated employees. I used my story, anonymously at first, and then publicly, to help others navigate similar situations. 3 months into my new role, I was walking through the downtown grocery store when I heard my name. "Regina?" I turned to see Gerald Fisher, the mentor who'd abandoned me at that coffee shop. He stood by the produce section, looking uncomfortable. "Regina, I owe you an apology." His voice was quiet. "I believed Dylan without question. I failed you as a mentor when you needed support most." I appreciated the apology. I really did. But standing there looking at him, I realized I no longer needed his approval or validation. I'd moved beyond requiring acceptance from people who hadn't believed in me. "Thank you for saying that, Gerald." He seemed to want more, some absolution or restoration of our former relationship, but I just nodded politely and continued my shopping. Some bridges, once burned, weren't worth rebuilding. Last month, a young woman on my team named Emma came to my office in tears. A manager in a different department had been taking credit for her work on a client presentation. She'd corrected him politely, and he'd responded by giving her a negative performance review, citing attitude problems. I saw myself in her terrified face. The fear of speaking up. The knowledge that she was right, but powerless. But Emma wasn't powerless. She had me now. I intervened immediately. I pulled the email records, documented Emma's contributions, and brought the evidence to Marcus Hartford personally. The manager was formally reprimanded. Emma's performance review was corrected and she received a commendation. And I made sure Emma understood she'd done nothing wrong by standing up for herself. That's why I stayed at Hartford and Associates. To be the protector I'd needed. To make sure what happened to me never happened to anyone else here. The financial security still felt unreal sometimes. I'd paid off my student loans completely. $48,000 gone in one payment. I had an emergency fund with 6 months of living expenses. I'd bought a small condo in Capitol Hill with a view of the mountains. And I'd helped my mom with her finances, covering the water heater repair and setting up a monthly transfer to make her retirement more comfortable. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. But I remembered how quickly financial stability could disappear. How 5 weeks ago I'd been choosing between gas money and groceries. I'd never take this security for granted. The broader impact surprised me. After the Denver Business Journal article, 3 other consulting firms in Denver adopted similar protection clauses. An industry publication wrote a feature story about my case, using a pseudonym at my request. But the impact was real. Companies were rethinking how they protected employees who acted with integrity. Change was happening. Slowly, but happening. I journaled regularly now, part of my therapist's recommendation. Last week, I wrote a letter to my past self, to the Regina who sat on her apartment floor at 2 a.m., thinking about surrendering. Dear Regina, I wrote, the terror you feel right now won't last forever. The injustice crushing you will be exposed. The people trying to destroy you will face consequences. Your integrity, the thing that seems to cost you everything right now, will be exactly what saves you. You're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to help others because of what you survived. Hold on. Just hold on a little longer. I keep that letter in my desk drawer and read it when I'm having difficult days. This evening, I sat in my office as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink. The city lights began twinkling below. I thought about that Friday afternoon when Dylan stood over my desk and destroyed my world with a single decision. At the time, it felt like the end of everything. My career, my reputation, my financial stability, my faith in justice. Everything burned down in 19 minutes. But it was actually a beginning, not of an easy path, but of discovering strength I didn't know I possessed, of learning that justice delayed isn't always justice denied. Sometimes it's just gathering evidence, of understanding that speaking truth has a cost, but silence costs more. I learned that institutions protect themselves first, and always will. Documentation matters more than trust. Your reputation after crisis is rebuilt by your actions, not by defending what you lost. Real allies reveal themselves when you're at your lowest, and fair-weather friends aren't worth mourning. Most importantly, I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is continuing, despite absolute terror, despite every logical reason to surrender, despite the crushing weight of injustice. That email I almost sent to Catherine Walsh. The surrender I came within seconds of submitting still haunts me. How close I came to giving up. What saved me was refusing to let injustice have the final word. When powerful people try to destroy you for doing the right thing, your best weapon isn't matching their tactics or fighting fire with fire. It's documentation, persistence, and finding the one person or entity with power who cares about truth. For me, it was Pinnacle Industries and Robert Mendoza. For someone else, it might be a journalist, a board member, a regulatory agency, or a lawyer willing to work on contingency. The key is staying alive long enough for truth to surface. Not just physically alive, but keeping your integrity alive. Not signing away your story. Not accepting the version of events that protects the powerful and erases you. Tomorrow morning, I'm interviewing candidates for a new junior position on my team. I'll choose someone talented and make sure they're protected. I'll build the workplace I needed when I was vulnerable. I'll teach them to document everything, to speak up without fear, and to know that someone with power has their back. As I locked my office and headed to the elevator, I thought about that Friday afternoon one more time. The moment Dylan fired me felt like the world ending. It was actually my world beginning. Not an easy world. Not a fair world. But a world where I learned my worth isn't determined by people who try to destroy me. Where standing up costs everything, but lying down costs more. Where justice might be delayed, buried, and fought against. But sometimes, if you refuse to surrender, it finds a way to surface. Was it worth the months of hell? The financial terror? The sleepless nights and panic attacks? I'm not sure anyone can answer that except the person who lived it. But I know this. I sleep soundly now. My reputation was rebuilt on truth, not compromise. When I look at myself in the mirror, I see someone who refused to break, even when breaking would have been easier. And that's worth more than any settlement check. So here's what I want you to think about. Have you ever been in a situation where doing the right thing cost you something significant? Where speaking up felt impossible because the people with power wanted you silent? What did you do? Did you find your voice, or do you wish you had? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these struggles makes all the difference. If this story resonated with you, if you've faced workplace injustice or retaliation for doing the right thing, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in impossible situations. And share this with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who's facing their own Dylan Crawford and needs to know that justice is possible, even when it feels impossibly far away. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that your integrity is worth fighting for, that documentation can be your greatest weapon, and that refusing to surrender can change everything. Stay strong out there. The world needs more people willing to do the right thing, even when it costs them, especially when it costs them, because that's how we change broken systems. One refusal to stay silent at a time.